just looking back when you first started, how do you get over the nerves? What was your thing? If you made a mistake, now I know you made a joke about Dion Dublin, but are you the type to beat yourself up that night? You can't sleep because of a mistake. Knowing there's pressure, knowing there's a Shaka Hislop or Pavel Srnicek behind you, just waiting to take that #1 spot.
Well, it wasn't just that night. It was my biggest problem at the very early part of my Newcastle career was beating myself up during the game.
During the game?
If I'm brutally honest, yeah. And you talk about, you talk about social media now, and you talk about reporters writing reports on the game, and they could give you a 2 out of 10, but I would be giving myself a -5 out of 10 because I was my worst critic. And that's not a good thing as well as a goalkeeper. You can be too harsh on yourself. So I actually went and spoke to the physio at Newcastle after, I don't know, I can't remember now, it was a year or two, and I just felt that I was too harsh on myself and too critical. And, one mistake was maybe leading to a second mistake in the same game, and that wasn't right. And I felt there was some sort of way I could deal with it better. And we went and spoke to a psychologist. He was at university with this guy in Cardiff, he said, who was an ex-goalkeeper. Now he's a sports psychologist. Let's sit down. And this was like, obviously, trying to think of many years ago now. This is 25 years ago, whatever it is, and every football Premier League club now would have a sports psychologist on their books, whereas that would maybe be seen as a weakness back then. So I had to go to the physio and the QT and not tell anyone and not tell anyone else that this guy, and we had to meet up away from the training ground and sort of go through different things to improve my psychology and mistake management, or spoke about visualization, spoke about the video and the music, and he put all this together for me, and the way mistakes, you called it mistake management, and it was like a psychological thing. You make a mistake, picture yourself putting that into the glove bag, zip the glove bag closed, and deal with it after the game or the next day with your goalkeeping coach, but do not think about that mistake during the game. That's the last thing you do, is think about that mistake. I know it's easier said than done, and it took some time to sort of build up that trust in what he was trying to tell me. But even we started using it in training. If you make a mistake in training, for example, you're doing a shooting practice and you make a mistake, and then you go, just give me one more to have a feel good. He would say, no, step out, put it in the bag, zip it up, and deal with that mistake after training. Don't just quickly do it, because in a game situation that happens, you might not touch the ball for 20 minutes.
That's true.
After, so it's like the only thing you've got is that mistake you think about. But the important thing is stick it in the glove bag, zip the glove bag closed so it's dealt with. You're not shying away from it. You've done it, but you have to think of the next action. You have to think what's happening next within the game. And then that night or the next day with your goalkeeping coach, you visualise yourself opening the glove bag up. The mistake comes out. What would you do different the next time? How would you dealt with it differently? What you've learned from it. You move on. You move on in the next game, the next training session, but you don't deal with it during that game. Very important.
Well, yeah, it's interesting because split seconds or half of a split second make a difference in the world of goalkeeping at the highest professional level. The moment you start doubting it, the moment you are a split second late to take that extra step because a mistake has been made, which is why the fine little details do matter.
Yeah.
It just got me thinking of, you talked about Peter Schmeichel, why he always shouted at his defenders, because the moment he makes it about them, it's their mistake, it's not his mistake, then the pressure's off him and he doesn't need to think about that.
I'll tell you a funny story. I've done a Q&A with Peter Schmeichel in Dublin there a few years ago now, I can't remember how long ago, but they're sort of both retired. And there's a big audience in the crowd, and just similar sort of line of questioning what we're talking about now. Peter, what happened when you made a mistake? How did you deal with making a mistake? And he said, this is him after he's finished playing, I've never made a mistake. That was his answer. And he even added the same response. I kind of laughed because we're all mic'd up and stuff on stage. And he goes, no, never made a mistake. And I said, come on. And he goes, no, it was someone else in front of me. But then I come away the next day and thinking, well, the great Peter Schmeichel never made a mistake. We all know we did make mistakes, because we all did make mistakes. That's part and parcel of a goalkeeper. But even to this day, his mindset was never to blame himself. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but if you think of that as a young goalkeeper, it's maybe not a bad thing.
No, it isn't.
Because then you didn't have that first mistake roll into a second mistake.
Yeah.
Because it was never his fault in his head.
Exactly, and I can tell you some of his defenders were not too happy about all the shouting.
No.
Some stories from Paul Parker.
I bet you, I bet you.
But it's also got me thinking, since we're on this line of thought, I've had a lot of conversations with David James. He's been here quite a few times with us. And I remember one thing he said, the first time he was beaten by a shot was a Tony Yeboah strike, the volley, the half volley.
That, yeah.
Classic, all-time Premier League great goal.
Yeah.
But that was the first time that he conceded a goal and he thought, I could have done nothing about it. And it had to be that special for him to think there's nothing I could do here. That's the level of self-belief you have to have sometimes as a goalkeeper.
I know, and I was asked recently what was the best goal you've ever conceded, and I was like, well, none of them, because you never like conceding any goal.
No.
But then you look at maybe the Wayne Rooney volley at Old Trafford, it always gets shown up. Yeah. And I was like, I went with my right hand, and then I questioned myself, maybe I should have went with my top hand or with my left hand. I might have saved it, even to this day, and I see it replayed. And then I'm involved with the Dennis Bergkamp when he flicks it around Nico Stabizas. I'm the goalkeeper. And again, I say to my kids, I made a save once, you just don't show, they don't show it on TV, but I mean, when you come up with the likes of Rooney and Bergkamp, Van Nistelrooy, Henry, all these, Yeboah, I don't know, there's so many great Premier League strikers you come across, don't you? There are going to be some goals you think, there's not any goalkeeper in the world would have saved that.
Here's what you tell your kids. Only special shots beat you, or special goals, which is why you always see that more than anything else. You just mentioned Rooney and Bergkamp, iconic goals.
Yeah.
So it has to be something special or bizarre.
I'm going to write that down. Yeah, we won't show them the Dion Dublin goal.
No.
We'll just show them the Bergkamp and Rooney goal.
That was Steve Harper.
Yeah,
that was 100% Steve Harper.
We'll blame him.
It wasn't HD yet at the time as well.
No,
so
black and white, some of them.
Yeah, you could probably kind of get away with it.